And now we are going to start our afternoon session of presentations. The first presentation me and Estelle, we are going to talk a little bit about the biomimetic approach and biomimetic projects that we are developing here in France with this regenerative notion behind it. So we can start my presentation. So we already told about, you have seen this graphic a little bit today already, so you have this notion of creating projects with positive impacts, and biomimicry is one way of doing that. So it's a tool to personalize all the regenerative engagements and ideals that we have in this discipline into practical solutions. Here in France, biomimicry is really developing, and we have a lot of a very large network of actors working with biomimicry and promoting biomimicry for regenerative design, so for urban projects that create a better planet. Specifically, CEEBIOS is animating one working group that's called Biomimicry Lab. This working group is composed today by 10 actors of the build space from France. So we have, for example, architects, building companies, we have real estate developers, we have urban designing companies, we have research lab also. All these actors, these stakeholders, they are interested in how to apply biomimicry, how to operationalize this concept in the field. This working group was created 1.5 years ago. The idea was to share methods to foster the development of these approaches and to develop these results, to promote real results in their projects, in the daily projects. After 1.5 years of work, we had published an online document as state of art, a document like looking for urban projects that were designed by French stakeholders or in France that applied biomimicry and had some kind of positive impacts. So you can see the image of this document on your screen. This document can be downloaded in the CEEBIOS website. It's only in French by now, but you can find some interesting projects inside. So, as I said, we documented actually 17 projects. One of the project was international project that probably some of you are aware and you know already. So it's the Bullet Center, a Living Building Challenge certified building, and 16 French projects that you can see in the screen, so located in France and some of them around the world in other countries like Russia, Senegal, and Australia. It's important to note that not all of these projects that we documented, they were built. Some of them, they were designed in the context of requests for proposals, but they were not held or accepted by the project owner, and the final that have that final decision. The idea creating this document and this study was to documentate and make and promote some transparency in how people are applying biomimicry today, how they're applying, what are the results that are being achieved or at least aimed. For each project, we created a standard fact sheet documenting the project, telling the history behind the project, and showing some main data, some useful information that usually it's hard to find when we are going to look for this project. So it was a collaborative work. All the designing teams were responsible for documenting their project, and it was a very rich experience. So you can see some different images from these projects, and this gives you some insights about how these have different projects and different biomimetic approaches that have been applied to them. So you are going to find projects that are working mostly at the facade level, projects that are working mostly at the urban organization, so at the urban design level, projects that are going to apply the biomimetic and regenerative approach at the building scale, so how to change the building structure and building form. I'm going to introduce some projects and some cases because cases are always interesting and we can always learn things from them. The first one is AlgaSense. It's a French project. It was designed in 2016. The idea here is to create a living facade that's done with bioreactor. So we are coupling bioalgae with the building structure to mutualize heating, to treat water, and to produce biomass that maybe can be used for the production of energy. The second project that we have been documented, so you have all the information about these projects in the document. Don't hesitate to take a look, mostly if you speak French. The second project is a project by Tangram Architects, that's a French architecture agency. This is a project in the sea, so it's called Biomimicry Reef. The idea here is to create an habitat, a new reef to protect an island in the French, in south of the France, and to work with bioluminescence, so to create lighting using also bacteria and algae to produce light to illuminate the building. A third project that maybe Estelle can talk a little bit further for us to complete my presentation. It's the foliage. So this building is at Lyon. It's called CERC. Here we have adaptative envelope. We have talking some of our presenters from this morning. They have been presenting facades, innovative and adaptative envelopes. And here we have one that's bio-inspired. That's the foliage system. We are going to find inspiration in stomach and flower mechanisms to open and closing to create this adaptative facade.
Yeah, so the closing and opening of the building facade allow to regulate light and thermal radiation, and the aim is to have uncentralized regulation or decentralized regulation of solar radiation. So you do not have to monitor the porosity of the facade because the material itself can regulate thermal radiation. And this afternoon, Stephen Ware will take part to the roundtable and also present some project from this architecture office that's developed biomimetics projects, and we can ask further details and questions. So the next project is Nianing Church in Senegal, designed by the Architecture Studio Institute in Paris. So this project is inspired by the Formite Mounds, and the aim is to regulate the heat, air quality, and also humidity in the building in order to protect from overheating. And this building was built last year, and it's using the stack effect and high thermal inertia in order to regulate the temperature inside the building. So in order to understand what are the main challenges in order to develop biomimetic and regenerative sustainable architecture, we compare these 15 projects in order to understand what were the main goals, the bio-inspiration models. And the first results we found is that the main objectives of using biomimetics was mostly for thermal regulation. So as you can see in this graphic, that thermal comfort is the main goal of this project, and then also the biodiversity hosting. So as the School of Biodiversity or Biolumin Reef project that host biodiversity. And the two other main challenges were to respond to climate change also. We found that the data were gathered through interview of the research teams, and they also fill the datasheet. So we have concrete feedback on many different design process of these biomimetic buildings. The other points we found is that a lot of these biomimetic building projects are focused on building envelopes efficiency rather than other scales, such as the scales of materials, systems, the scale of the building and neighborhoods. As introduced at the beginning, there are many shading systems that aim to regulate light and heat. So nowadays, in France, these biomimetic systems focus on this topic, since energy is one of the main challenges in order to face climate change. And we also observe that the biological models that inspired this building are mostly within the kingdom of animals, plants, and fungi, very little, and unicellular and bacteria living systems inspired little this project. So we say that there is a kind of a taxonomic bias, since the design teams are mostly inspired by living systems they know, like plants or animals. But these projects were also very inspired by ecosystems, which is more systemic approach in order to face different environmental challenge with the building and at the scale of the neighborhoods. So it's interesting to compare that there are some projects that have a very functional analysis of living systems and of single properties, and some others also are inspired by ecosystems. So this is two different and complementary approaches to design regenerative and biomimetics buildings. And we also found that regarding the certification and labels, these projects integrate a lot of French standards like the HQE, or also international standards like WELS or BREEAM, and the Living Building Challenge like the Bullet Center introduced at the beginning. So some of these projects target this certification, and others are not certified, but they work in the way to be certified. In order to conclude the main results of this study, we see that about the tools, the teams mentions that they use different design tools, and there is a need to link existing tools and practice, since some design teams were not well aware about the existing tools they can use during the design process. So this gap between research and practice is still really important to reduce in order to have efficient regenerative design. And second point is so very related to the first one, is there is a need to increase the knowledge about regenerative and biological data in order to have more efficient and restorative buildings and architectural projects. So as introduced by Laura at the beginning of the day from CEEBIOS, that's what we try to do to link practice and research with a free PhD at CEEBIOS. So the aim is to fill the gap between the properties of biological systems and the practice. So here you can see the three different PhD carry out in order to work on that topic. And the first one is about methodologies carried out by Anne Letard, applied to many different fields where urban planning and architecture could be one of them. The second research PhD was about the building envelopes and their multi-regulation properties. So how do abstract multi-regulation properties of living systems in order to design multi-criteria building facades. And the last one is about regenerative urban planning carried out by Eduardo in order to develop tools and methods aligned with a restorative design process for urban plannings and buildings also. We would like to synthesize the state of the art of biomimetics and regenerative or biomimetics for regenerative design in architecture with the hype cycle. The hype cycle is a way to analyze the maturity or the technology readiness level of a novel technology. We can say that at the beginning, biomimetics was a novel tool that where people, media, and academics were very enthusiastic. For instance, these buildings you can see inspired by the Thermite Mounds in Harare, Zimbabwe, stimulates a lot of creativity, but after, when architect and consulting engineer would like to develop buildings inspired by nature, they realize that it's much more complicated than just being inspired by nature and transfer a single principle. That's what drives us to the peak of disillusion. And then since several years, there are many tools, methods, and case of study and proofs of concepts that have been developed in order to prove that biomimetics can help to solve will help to integrate the sustainable goals and have energy efficiency and help for biodiversity integration, etc. So here you can see down some example and case of study that have been quantified in order to prove how they help to solve this challenge. So now in 2020, we can say that we are going to maturity of the approach since we have concrete or existing case of study and existing tools in order to keep on developing restorative and with biomimetics architecture. If you would like to explore and go further and found this different information, you can go, for instance, on the CEEBIOS website. And these resources, where some of them are in English, are available. And in addition, Eduardo submits this paper in order to present the results about the comparative analysis of this 16 bio-inspired projects.
Thank you very much, Estelle, for finishing the presentation. I believe we can check if you have some questions. I have just one point to complete the speech from Estelle. It's also interesting to look for the labels that we found in this sample of 16 projects, regenerative and biomimetic projects in France, and to observe that we have some labels that have been highlighted by the Coast Action as frameworks and tools to promote regenerative design as well, that we have already discussed today, as the Living Building Challenge and all the LFI certification family. They are still emerging in the French context, and maybe we are going to discuss it a little bit with Oscar and other speakers during our roundtable. If you don't hesitate to have more information, if you wish to have more information on the LBC certification families, to take a look on the Living Future Institute website. So you can understand more these emerging labels that are really based on regenerative design, and that some projects here in Europe are trying to apply. And keep also an eye on our work on CEEBIOS, because this paper, so we published this document mostly in French now, so with these fact sheets for these projects. But as Estelle told you, we submitted a paper cross-analyzing all the data from these projects in English, so to give more visibility to this work. Thank you very much.